Hello, Internet. Welcome to another Shopify AMA with 2H Media. I'm Aron Murch, and once again, I am answering your questions on Shopify. We are gearing up for what looks like a bit of a shorter stream today. The way these streams work, if you're just joining us for the first time, is we have a specific 2H Media AMA board on the Shopify forums where you can submit your questions related to whatever topic we're discussing for the given stream, and then I answer those questions live on Twitch. Typically speaking, we heavily prioritize those questions on the forum, but a bit of an anomaly. I'm only seeing one question so far on the Shopify 2H Media AMA board. So it looks like oh, I've got a second question in here. Someone's wondering how to watch the stream. Link not opening live stream on Twitch. That's interesting. I'm going to reply to this right now, make sure that they make it into the stream okay. Oh! I see you, Michael. I see you in the Twitch chat as well. I'm glad you made it in okay. I'm going to go ahead and drop the link in your question on the board anyways, just in case anyone else is running into the same challenge as you. I can confirm that I am live on Twitch. Here is the link in case anyone else finds this forum thread. Great talking to you in the chat. Hard to find. Yeah, it can be. It's a bit of an interesting thing. Originally, there was no live stream. So the first couple of these we did were just on the forum itself. And so, there was a scheduled window in which we were answering questions on the forum, almost like when they do the AMAs on Reddit, where, someone will say, between 1 and 2 p.m. on such and such day, I'll be answering questions on the forum. And a lot of people in the Shopify audience weren't familiar with that AMA format. A lot of people had never, tuned into a forum board specifically to get their questions answered. And so we ended up adding in the live stream component because it made this whole thing make a lot more sense. The people who weren't quite used to the concept of like, oh, what do you mean? They're answering forum questions, but only within a specific window. And so it's worked quite well. But as there's no direct integration between the Twitch stream and the forum thread, it does take some clicking around to find where we're chatting. I am starting to see some people in the chat, which is fantastic. So I'm going to go ahead and drop an explanation one more time about kind of how we do this, and then I'll dive right in. So this is another 2H Media AMA in partnership with Shopify. The way we do this is there is a specific forum board where you can ask your questions, and I'll go ahead and drop the link to that in chat. And I typically prioritize answering questions from this forum board before answering questions in the Twitch chat. With that said, we got a much smaller turnout on the forum than we did this time than we do usually. Why that is, hard to say. Could be things going on in people's lives. Could just be that this is our third time talking about Black Friday, Cyber Monday this year, and people might be ready to move on to new topics, so we'll see. We'll be doing something different next month or the month after. And then, in any case, I've got one question in the forum that I'm going to go ahead and answer. Usually the way this works is if there's a bunch of questions, you upvote the ones that you like, the ones that you want to see answered. I prioritize those ones first, get through as many as I can, and then if there's time left over at the end of the stream, I go ahead and answer your questions directly from the Twitch chat. In this case, I've only got the one question on the board, so I'm going to go through, I'm going to answer that question, and then I'm going to stick around for probably 15 minutes after that, see if you guys have any questions that you want to drop in the Twitch chat, and we'll just kind of play it by ear from there and see how it goes. So, like I say, this is working out to probably be one of our shorter streams, but that's okay. So I'm gonna dive right in, and I will be refreshing the Shopify forum board as well as we go to see if any more questions pop up as we're going, because I do already see a second question that's just come in while we're on the stream, so that's great. Diving right in to our very first question, and I'm going to share screen so that you can see this question with me. This question comes from Four Paws and Planet. I have a small, eco-friendly dog treats biz and do really well at in-person sales at Christmas markets, but struggle to get these customers to shop online with me. I've tried email sign-up competitions, referral schemes, QR codes, first shop discounts, but nothing is gaining traction. Can you help? Thanks, Helen. Helen, it's a great question. I am excited for this one because it tells me that you're doing a lot of good things. You're doing some of the things that we really recommend for small businesses. Broadly speaking, if you're brand new, getting the word out there is really, really challenging. If you're a small business, building an audience online is a really uphill battle, and you either need a lot of money or a lot of time, or both, ideally. If you have a lot of money, one of the fastest ways to drive traffic to an online store is paying for digital ads. If you have more limited money, the best things to do are time-intensive activities that let you build direct relationships with your audience and push them into your store. So, in-person networking with local businesses, attending trade shows and markets, and actually associating with your audience. Those are great ways to get some in-person sales and build a network that can then migrate to your website for purchases. And this is where Helen's having some challenges. So doing the right things to get in front of an audience in terms of that local outreach, and then struggling to get people onto the online store. And there's a ton of reasons that could be. When we look at an online store that's not seeing the sales that they want, we have to look at the entire sales cycle to really break down where the problem is. In order to improve your sales, we have to do a diagnosis, and we look at every step of the funnel to make that make sense. So, the first place we look is at the traffic. How many actual visitors are you getting to your online store, and what are you doing in terms of outreach to attract those visitors? So we're taking your funnel, we start at the top, and then we kind of work down towards the bottom of the funnel. If you are not getting massive amounts of traffic, if you're not getting tons of outreach leading to tons of traffic, you're going to have an online store that doesn't look like it's performing. So it's important to put conversion in perspective. The typical online store, the typical online Shopify store that's been optimized for conversion will do somewhere between a 1% and a 3% conversion rate. So that means for every 100 visitors that hit your site, anywhere between 1 and 3% of those are converting. You're not likely to exceed that conversion rate. Basically, no one does. If you're at the high end of that conversion rate, if you're getting 3% conversion rate on your website, that already puts you in the top percentile of online stores. So you're doing really well at that point. Now, I don't know what Helen's conversion rates are, but that's one of the first things I would look to. Is I would say, okay, how many people are we driving into the online store? And then when they hit the online store, what's the actual conversion rate look like? And the reason it's important to understand what a typical conversion rate looks like is because then you can work that backwards from your goals to figure out how much traffic you need in order to be successful. So say you want to sell 1,000 products, or say you want to sell 3,000, you want to do 3,000 orders. That's quite a few orders. You want to do those 3,000 orders over the course of a year, right? So it's distributed over the full year. If you want to do 3,000 orders and you've got an absolutely optimized conversion rate, that's a 3% conversion rate. That means you need 100,000 visitors to your online store in order to see those 3,000 sales over the course of the year, and that works out to just shy of like 10,000 visitors a month. So that's some really basic napkin math. But the takeaway from that is, what is your sales target? How many orders do you need in order to keep your business afloat? And how much traffic do you need for that to even be possible in the first place? So, there's some sentiment here. I've struggled to get my in-person customers to shop online with me. That may be true, but there also just may not be enough of them hitting the website in order to have useful metrics in terms of conversions. That's one of the first places I would look. Again, take what you need in terms of number of sales you're hoping to achieve across the year, and figure out what that would look like as 3% of your visitors at the absolute best case scenario, and that's going to tell you how much traffic you need in order to stay afloat. And if you're not getting that much traffic, then you may need to be more active, do more events, keep leveraging those in-person sales in order to keep the cash flow up. As you build revenue, maybe invest some of that in online advertising in order to drive traffic to the website. There's lots of different ways you can try to tackle that traffic piece, but they really do just come in down to like pumping more money into the engine to drive direct traffic with ads, or pumping more time in to just try to build more relationships and connections with people. Suppose you have traffic to the online store. Maybe you're meeting an absolute mountain of people at these Christmas markets, and they are actually going and visiting the online store. Some of them may not. That's one of the things to look at. You've tried referral schemes, QR codes, discounts. Those are some of the right things to try, but even those are not going to have 100% conversion rate. Some portion of people who receive one of those are never going to visit the online store. And for the ones that do, there can be all kinds of issues that stop them from ordering. And this is where we have to look at the actual store itself. The conversion rate, again, we're aiming for between 1% and 3%. If you're doing a relatively low volume of traffic to the online store, conversion rate's probably not the first place to start. You've probably got to pump those traffic numbers up before you can make any real decisions about the store's performance. But once you get to a point where you've got steady traffic to the store, if your conversion rates are below that 1% mark, there's probably a lot of work you can do to improve performance of the online store. One of the most common things I see is challenges in just navigating to a product page and making a purchase. One of the most important metrics in terms of conversion is how many clicks does it take in order for someone to make a purchase when they actually reach your online store. We want to keep that number as low as possible, and there's a couple of ways we can achieve that. So one of the biggest ones is whatever your advertising approach is, however you're directing traffic to your online store, one of the best things you can do for conversion is direct that traffic straight to a product page rather than to your home page. Because if you're directing people to a product page, now they've got all the product information in front of them, and they've got the add to cart button right there. So it's one click to actually get into the cart point where the product's in your cart, and you can actually make a purchase. Whereas if you're directing people to your homepage, depending on how the site is set up, it might be several clicks before someone can actually reach a checkout. In the case of this dog treats business, if you're selling one specific type of treat at a market, and you're giving people a QR code with a discount to buy more dog treats, your best case scenario would be to match that to whatever specific product you're selling at that market. If you can link to the same dog treats that people are buying in person on the online store and send them directly to that product page, you're going to have a much easier time converting than if you're sending them to the home page and hoping that they navigate to whatever product they're looking for. And the same thing applies to running digital ads. If you run digital ads for a specific product, you want that ad to go to the product page that you're advertising on rather than to your homepage, because that's going to do a lot to help move people through the conversion process. So imagine that every click required to make a purchase kind of cuts your conversion rate in half. It's a really, really important process to make as efficient as possible. Lots of other reasons people might not be converting and buying through your online store. One of the biggest ones we see is shipping rates that are either too high or poorly outlined. So this is one of the most common things we see that needs to get fixed on an online store is the shipping rates. Either you're charging way too much for shipping, people are hitting the cart and then abandoning, and you can get some of those metrics in the back end of your Shopify store, or people are not hitting your free shipping tiers, either because you have free shipping on orders over $50 and that's not advertised anywhere on the site, and people's orders are coming in at $45 and they have no idea that if they add another $5 to their cart, they'll hit a free shipping tier, or it could be that your checkout process is broken. We see that a lot too. So it's important to test your checkout process and punch in different address information every time you go through the checkout during testing. We've had some clients that thought that they were selling, across the United States, and they had certain key markets where their checkout was actually failing. They didn't have the rates configured properly, and when visitors would try to check out in those specific locations, they would abandon their purchase at the checkout because they actually couldn't couldn't select a shipping rate and couldn't complete the checkout. So we've seen that before. The owner of the store assumed everything was working fine because the checkout was working in their location, but it just wasn't working in these other specific ones. I would, breaking that down, if you're having trouble converting people to online stores, first look at, are we actually pushing enough traffic to the online store to get useful information? If our conversion rate is low, can we improve our calls to action, send people directly to the product page, make sure all the information they need is right on that page in order to make a purchase? A lot of companies, especially selling more complex products, don't put enough information on the product pages. And then can we make sure there's no roadblocks during the checkout process? So make sure the shipping rates make sense, make sure they're clearly explained, and then make sure the checkout itself is really working. And those are sort of the broad steps we would go through to address an issue with people not adopting your online store. If you go through all of those things and everything is optimized, you're getting lots of traffic, the site is optimized for conversion, there's no roadblocks to purchases, and you're still not getting the conversion rates you want to see, the next thing we have to look at is product market fit. And this is one of those tricky things where you have to ask yourself really difficult questions. In some cases, the product is just not appealing. There are stores we see where, we could give you the best online store in the world, but if you're selling a product that no one wants, it's going to be really tough to make that online store do anything. Supply and demand is ultimately independent of anything we do from a marketing standpoint. If the demand's not there, all the marketing in the world's not going to help. And then sometimes, like I say, it's market fit, meaning you're getting a ton of traffic, but it's the wrong traffic for your product. Maybe you're advertising in the wrong places, and that can be difficult to identify, but it's important to consider if everything else appears like it should be working, but again, you're still not getting the conversion that you'd like to see. And some of it might just be that a product is really good for in-person sales and is going to struggle online. In the specific question that we're being asked about, it's for a dog treat business, doing really well at in-person sales at Christmas markets. Now, I don't know what these specific dog treats look like, but I'm envisioning them as a very homemade Christmas-themed dog treat. I've seen those before at markets, and I can imagine that there is a volume of people that are going to the market because it's a fun Christmas activity to participate in, seeing these dog treats and going, oh, that would be a really cute Christmas gift for Fluffy so that he's got something under the tree. Or, oh, I'm going to grab those because it's in season. And there's a good chance that that particular customer isn't seeing that as like a long-term recurring purchase. And so they're not bridging the gap between purchasing this here and now at the market and then navigating to your website for future purchases. Overcoming that hurdle can be super, super challenging. And it may or may not be something that you can accomplish, especially depending on how much of an interaction you're able to have with these customers when they're stopping by your booth at this market. To my mind, one of the most important things you can do in that case is direct the conversation in terms of priming them to make the most of your website. So I mentioned earlier, if you can direct them to the same product page online, that can be effective. And what that could be effective for in this case is like more immediate sales. Hey, if you have any other friends who you think would like these, I do sell them online as well. Here's a QR code, and a coupon code takes you right to the web page where we're selling this product. Maybe you've offered a discount on the market, and if you go to this web page, your friend can get them at the same discounted market price that we've been selling them at today. Check it out. And they might share that. You might get some other people visiting the website through that coupon. The other side of it would be directing them somewhere else on your website and saying, hey, these are really great right now. It's Christmas time. We do offer products that are available all season. We've got Easter themed dog treats coming out later on as well. Sign up for our mailing list so that you can see when our other seasonal treats come out, or even see a list of other markets we're going to be at and drive some more of the in-person sales. But my point is, you might have to put the idea in people's heads of building that long-term relationship with your business, because when they're at a holiday market purchasing, I'm assuming Christmas themed, doesn't say in the post, they're either Christmas themed or generic, but probably Christmas themed dog treats because they're at a Christmas market. There's a good chance they're not thinking about the day-to-day life and purchase it for their pet 6 months down the line. So you might have to plant some of those seeds in their head ahead of time. That was a great question from Helen. I'm going to navigate back to the AMA board. It seems we've had one more question come in the AMA board, and then I do see a question in the Twitch chat as well. So I'm going to answer this second question on the AMA board, and then I'll jump over to the Twitch chat and get that question answered too. So the question on the AMA board is strategies for new shop, and I'll share a screen so that you can see the question as well. Okay, there we go. And Laxtoy VR, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, says, "Hi, I just opened my shop a few months ago. I sell apparel. Do you have any tips for retaining holiday shoppers for new shops? I'm using meta ads to drive traffic to my store." Great question. Retaining holiday shoppers, that's the core of the question. How do I hang on to one-time purchasers that are here for a big holiday sale or here because of a holiday advertising push and turn them into repeat purchasers? There's a few of the great things you can do. One of the best things you can do is email marketing. Have a really strong post-purchase follow-up campaign. So if you have an email marketing integration with your Shopify store, what you can actually do is use that to reach back out to your purchasers on a scheduled and automated basis. The app we use when we set these up for people is called Klaviyo. It's one of the most popular email marketing integrations for Shopify. And the way that post-purchase follow-up campaign works is you schedule out these email responses that are templated and canned, and when people go to your online store to make a purchase, their email gets recorded during checkout for the sake of the transactional emails. They're required to actually, send them their order confirmation and everything, and then they opt into your email marketing engine as part of that process. And so you can actually send them follow-up emails automatically out of this software on a scheduled basis. So you might send one the day after their purchase, just thanking them for the purchase. You might schedule one for a week after that, offering them a discount code on their next purchase. You might send a follow-up email a couple of weeks out asking for a review request. And then you can schedule these, a couple months out as well, just to tap people again and say, hey, you purchased from us back in December. why don't you come back? We've got more great products, and here's a coupon. We'd love to see you visit the store again. So like those post-purchase follow-up campaigns are one of the best ways to turn holiday shoppers to turn one-time customers into returning customers. I'm also not a meta ads expert, but I know one of the things we do on the search engine ad side of things is retargeting existing customers with our campaigns. So one of the things you can do is actually punch some of your audience information into your digital advertising platform and try to retarget some of those customers with ads. Because unless you run a very specific website, most customers are not checking back on your site on a regular basis, just looking for new products and like just checking out the deals. Typically, you have to really drive a lot of traffic yourself. Excuse me. And so, some of the top ways to do that are email marketing, post-purchase follow-up campaigns, and then retargeting campaigns and remarketing campaigns through your digital advertising platforms. Beyond that, there's some really basic things you can do. You can include a coupon code in the product packaging for everything you ship out. That's a really big one. We like to tell people your product packaging itself, the actual boxes you ship your products in, that's the only thing you send to your customers with 100% open rate. Yeah, you send out an email, some portion of people are going to delete that email without ever having opened and read it. You send out your product packaging with your product in it to your customers. Pretty much every single one of those is going to open that up to get the product. If the first thing they see in there is a nice little thank you note with a coupon code and a link back to the website, that's a great way to drive future traffic. So those are some of the basic things I would invest in for retargeting and turning one-time purchasers into repeat purchasers. The question was, this is for a new shop. Some of these things take time to pay off. So some of my advice would be get the framework in place early. If you can get your email marketing engine set up now, get some of those flows set up early that do the automated post-purchase follow-up. It doesn't have to be perfect. Having it in place and working is a great way to build out repeat purchasers over time. Not 100% of them are going to turn into repeat purchasers, even with the best things in place. But the more you can put in place the earlier on, and then leave that running for a long time, the more your audience is going to build as you continue to grow your business. So that was a great question about turning one-time purchasers into repeat purchasers if you are a new shop. That is it. That's all the questions on the Shopify forum currently. I do see the one in the Twitch chat, which I'll come back to in a minute. And just an update for anyone who's just joining us for the first time. Typically in these AMAs in partnership with Shopify, what we do is we answer your questions posted to the 2H Media AMA board on the Shopify forum, which I linked at the beginning of the stream. And as I mentioned when I kicked off the stream, we were gearing up for a bit of a shorter stream today, because of limited engagement on the forum board this time around. I do see one question in the Twitch chat. Normally, I stick around a little bit after the questions on the AMA board are answered, just to see if there's anyone who wants to get their questions answered on the fly on the stream, didn't feel comfortable posting to the forum. So that's what I'm about to do. If I'll refresh the forum a couple of more times before I end out the stream. I'm going to answer this next question in the Twitch chat, and then if anyone else who's watching has questions that they want to get answered, feel free to just jump in and drop those questions right in the chat. Because I am through the ones in the forum, I can push my attention right over to the Twitch chat, focus on answering questions there. So if you've got any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I will do my very best to answer those before the stream ends. And then if nothing else comes in, then I'll just end up closing out the stream a little early after we get through this question that's in the chat. So let's dive into that right now. And then while I'm answering this, like I say, if you've got any questions that you'd love to have answered, feel free to drop those so I can get to those too. And this question comes from Michael, who asks, How do I break into a market? I'm doing small markets too and growing a local following, but I'd like to break into my market. People love our products. How do I get the traffic to my site? Michael, what industry are you trying to break into? Because that does have an impact on the best strategies that are going to work for you. There's no like perfect answers that work for every business in every industry. And when I wait for you to respond to my question, I'll try to answer this as generally as I can. Breaking into a market is really challenging. Oh, I see you've answered. You're doing garden seeds and flower seeds. Okay, so I'll come back to some specific approaches in a minute. How do I break into a market? Doing small markets too, and growing a local following. If you're a small business, I kind of touched on this at the beginning of the stream. For any business, the way to drive traffic, you have to either leverage a ton of free time or a ton of money. There's no real like cheap passive approaches to driving traffic in e-commerce. The big difference between an e-commerce store and a physical store is you don't really have a physical storefront. So you're not going to get a lot of traffic of people that are just kind of passing by, noticing you, and then diving into your online store. You really have to drive all the traffic yourself. In terms of driving traffic to an online store as a small business, most small businesses don't have deep pockets. So pushing the amount of traffic that you need to push strictly through digital advertising is usually a challenge. We typically recommend a marketing budget of at least, like at the low end, $1,000 a month to pour into digital ads in order to start driving traffic. And we see companies spending $10,000 a month on ads easily. Like that number can kind of go up as high as you want it to. And it's important to know that you're bidding against everyone else in the ecosystem. So like garden seeds and flower seeds, I imagine is an intensely competitive industry because there's some very large companies in the space that have been selling seeds for hundreds of years. And those very large companies are likely already doing digital advertising. They're going to be bidding on keywords, and it's going to drive your cost per click up. I'm not an advertising expert, so I'd be relying on someone else in my company to actually dive in and make those assessments if you did want to try digital advertising. But broadly speaking, I suspect that that's going to be an expensive way to drive traffic. In terms of options that leverage your time, there's a few things that can work really well. I mean, so one of the in-person markets are great because it's cash in your pocket if you're making sales at the markets, and then it's a great way to build connections with local people, so that it's a great way to build connections with local people so that you're building a local audience that has a relationship with you as a person. Those people that you've met and spoken to and really made an impression on. Those are going to be some of your most supportive customers as a small business. In terms of breaking into the garden seed and flower seed market specifically, there's a few options I'd look into. One is, can you get listed? Can you get your product featured in any local stores? Are there any local gardening stores that you can partner up with that would be willing to put your product on the shelves? That's one of the most effective ways to start building again that local audience, is just get your product in front of as many people as possible. If you can partner with local stores to get your product on the shelves, that can really help. If you can partner with any local contractors, if there's anyone doing like landscaping and gardening as a business in your area, and you can partner with them to get them purchasing your seeds or get those seeds recommended to their clients, that can help quite a bit as well. And then for online approach, I'd be going straight back to Facebook. In terms of social media, a lot of people ignore Facebook these days because they think, TikTok is the newest best thing. People have moved to more visual platforms like Instagram. Facebook still has some of the highest daily active users across all social media platforms, and it's not even close. There's tons and tons of traffic on Facebook, but you just need to know how to use the platform still. So I would be looking for gardening groups that are available, gardening groups that are on Facebook that allow advertising and linking. You have to kind of check through the rules on each group, and then I would be posting regular content to those groups talking about gardening, showing off plants that have been grown with your seeds, trying to build engaging posts that then link back to the online store. If you can like go out and actively find Facebook groups that are relevant to your market, relevant to your niche, that's going to do a lot to help you get in front of your customers that just posting to your own channels won't. Because if you're newer and you don't have a ton of followers, it can be really tough to get those followers in the first place. And so a lot of people aren't going to see your content if you're just posting it for yourself. So getting into those different groups can be really effective. And you can do the same thing on Reddit. You know, there's Reddit communities for all kinds of things. I'm sure there are gardening communities out there that allow advertising posts. Maybe it's only once a month. Maybe it's after 6 months of history showing that you're a real person commenting about real stuff. So like it might take some investment to get situated in some of these online groups in order to be allowed to advertise or in order to have people be receptive to your advertising. But in terms of like breaking into organic markets online, that's one of the ways I would do it, is go and look for people talking about gardening online and see if you can get involved in that conversation, and then get some people navigating to your website after they've made that connection with you through the site. As a small business owner, connections with people, whether they're digital or in person, are one of the best things you can do to build an audience. Happy to answer the question. I see another one in the Twitch chat, which I'll jump to in a moment. The next question comes from Manmanis 428. Not sure if I'm saying that right. Which marketing channels / digital ads, low cost and high leverage, have you seen work best for small Shopify businesses just starting to grow? Also, if our business products are highly dependent on storytelling, we do really well in person, how best to translate that to an online store? Great question. There's really two questions there. Which marketing channels / digital ads, low cost and high leverage, have you seen work best for small Shopify businesses just starting to grow? This is a bit of a misconception. Like, there really are not any low cost, high leverage options that I've seen that work. A lot of people make a lot of promises about how much traffic they can drive to your online store for next to no money. The reality of the situation is the e-commerce is a very competitive landscape. Driving traffic to your online store is time consuming and expensive. Nothing low cost is going to work nearly as effectively and nearly as quickly as just throwing a bunch of money at the problem. If you want to drive high volume traffic to your online store, the best thing you can do is digital advertising, and nothing else is even close. And I'm kind of wrapping like influencer marketing into that as well. You know, if you can afford to pay influencers in your space to drive traffic to your store, that's one of the most expensive options, but those can be some of the highest value leads. You can drive a ton of traffic through digital advertising on search engines or digital advertising on social media. Anything that's low cost in terms of money is going to be high cost in terms of time, and it's typically going to be slower to pay off. The only real exception to this is if you are just an absolute rock star at social media. If you live and breathe social media and you've had 40 viral posts before you even started a business because you just really got the algorithm and gelled with the content, and you're just hip and trendy and you know what's going on and people want to listen to what you have to say, and you can like take that ability to like very quickly and easily build an online following in social media, you can turn that into an e-commerce presence relatively affordably. You know, that's sort of the only way to be popular fast is just to be good at getting popular. I know that's a bit of a non-answer, but that's the unfortunate reality of it. In terms of driving traffic, it's traditional approaches. If you want to drive traffic and your budget is limited, you've got to focus on activities that can help put money in your pocket as quickly and easily as possible, and which help you build relationships. So, you know, it's the second part of the question is we do really well in person. So my advice would be to leverage those in-person activities. Go to more markets, go to more trade shows, get in front of people, sell product, try to keep your expenses down by keeping revenue up. And leverage those in-person conversations to drive traffic to your online store. I mean, we talked a little bit about how to do this earlier in the stream. There's some great options in terms of giving people discount codes and QR codes, leading people right to your product pages, get people back on store, get people thinking about long-term purchases, and just try to leverage those in-person conversations to create repeat customers. If you tie in some of the other options we talked about, like retargeting campaigns and like post-purchase follow-up campaigns through email marketing, those can be some great ways to recapture leads that you have met in person, converted to one online sale, and now you're trying to turn them into multiple online sales. It's really, I mean, your options are the traditional options. You can advertise physically, you can advertise digitally, and you can start building a presence on social media, and you can start building up your SEO. Those last two options for most businesses are longer term approaches that can pay off over a series of months to years rather than days to weeks. So yeah, which marketing channels are low cost and high leverage? There really aren't any. It's high cost for like the best results have a heavy cost, and that cost can either be time, money, or some combination of the two. If the products are highly dependent on storytelling, we do really well in person. How best to translate that to an online store? So I love this part of the question because I have a much more actionable answer for you. I mentioned earlier in the stream, most businesses don't do nearly enough with their product pages. So we do really well. You do really well in person, probably because you're able to explain the product really well and build excitement in your audience. Replicating that as closely as possible on the online store is really important for converting visitors into purchasers. We always talk about building product stories, not just product pages. And there are certain companies in the space, or there are certain companies in the e-commerce space that do this really, really well. I always look to Apple as an inspiration. If you go to the website for any given iPhone and you start scrolling, that page is a mile long. And when you start looking at that page, they're telling a story about the product through the website, and they do it section by section by providing tons and tons and tons of information that is speaking to their core audience about why they will value that product. They're telling the story of their product, they're engaging with the audience that they specifically want to target, and they're doing that through these very in-depth product pages. If you compare the product page for the iPhone as the gold standard to the typical product page that you see for a new Shopify site, the difference is night and day. Usually what I see when I review a Shopify site where people aren't thinking about product story is a gallery of sort of 1 to 6 images, which is where you want the gallery to be, and then maybe 1 to 3 paragraphs of text if I'm lucky. That's kind of what I typically see, and that's in your like standard Shopify product section where you've got your gallery on one side and then the product description and your add to cart buttons on the other. That's the typical Shopify site I store, or Shopify site I see when I'm doing audits. And if your product is highly dependent on storytelling, you want way more than that. You're giving up all of the real estate that people could be kind of endlessly scrolling through to really learn about your product. It's a few years old now. Shopify did an update called Online Store 2.0 where they overhauled the customizer and gave you a lot more options to customize your theme. They added sections everywhere, and they made it so that you can build these really great websites on platform. I love Online Store 2.0. If I could convince all of our customers to migrate to Shopify, including the ones that are not in e-commerce, I would, just because the Shopify page builder is so much better than everything else on the market. So the tools are there. If you've got Shopify, you've got access to tools that can build really great websites. Most people are underutilizing those. So I'm going to get way too technical for just a second. Within the customizer in your online store, you can go into the little menu at the top and you can add a new template for a page or a product. And in this case, I want to talk about products. So you can go into that little menu in the top, and you can select products, and you can select add new template. And what that's going to do is that's going to open up a new page in the customizer where you can build out sections for that product template. And there's a complicated way you can do this, and there's a much less complicated way you can do this. So the complicated way is that you can build out a template that uses all kinds of meta fields and all kinds of dynamic data to build one really in-depth template that applies to all of your products. For most do-it-yourselfers, that's going to get too technical in a hurry, and you're going to have a hard time with the meta fields and linking the dynamic data and building out good product stories within one template that applies to a bunch of products is going to be a real challenge. So what I recommend for most people, which works just as well and is way easier to implement, is within that list, when you go and you add a new template for a product, do individual templates for all of your top 5 or 10 products. Build out each of those templates with information specific to that product. Tell the full story. Include tons of images within the body of the content. Include all your FAQs right there in the template so people aren't having to navigate off the product page to learn about the product. If you've got video content, include it in that template as well, and build that out so that it's all about the story of your product. Very similar to how Apple builds their product page for the iPhone. Get tons and tons of information baked into that template, and then just in the product tab in the back end of your Shopify store, so no longer in the customer, is it? In the product tab, just apply those templates to your products on an individual basis, and you'll be able to show off a lot of information about your product and tell a story about your product in a much more engaging way than if you're just trying to stuff that same information into the product description. So if you've got a product that really depends on storytelling and sharing information and building engagement, building in-depth product stories through Shopify Customizer templates is one of the most effective ways to actually build out your online store and replicate that in-person experience as closely as possible online. The other thing I kind of alluded to in that conversation is video. When you hit a point where you have the budget for it, including video on your product pages is one of the absolute best things you can do for your business. Even if you don't have the budget for it, but you've got a modern smartphone, if you can record that video yourself and figure out how to get to a good enough quality, not perfect, good enough, that it can go on that product page and tell people about your product. If you're good at telling the story around your product, which it sounds like you are because you're doing it in person all the time, there's no reason you can't take a video of yourself telling that same story and embed that right on your product pages to speak, so that you can speak on your own behalf. Video is one of the most important media assets you can use in an online store. I've seen metrics that having a video on your product pages increases conversion rates even if people don't watch the video. It just shows a level of scale and commitment to the product that a lot of businesses can't meet or choose not to meet. And so, build out those product pages is my first bit of advice for you. And then if you can get video content onto those pages as well, even better. I hope that answers the question. I'm going to go ahead and refresh the forum to see if anything else has come on while we're on the line. Doesn't look like there's anything else in the forum, so I'll keep focused on the Twitch chat. Anyone else who's been joining us, if you have questions you want to get answered about marketing your Shopify store, or especially as it relates to following up on the Black Friday and Christmas holiday sales, please feel free to drop those in the chat because I'll be sticking around for a few more minutes to see if those come in. And for those of you who've already asked questions in the chat, if you've got follow-up questions, feel free to drop those as well, because I'm more than happy to answer your questions as well. Shopify. I'm just gonna, while I wait to see if any more questions come in, I see that's super helpful. Didn't even know that was an option, customizing product pages. Yeah, customizing product pages is super critical. I believe I have a guide on how to do that on my YouTube channel, which I'm going to try to bring up so I can drop that in the chat as well. And so I'll just take a minute to look for that while I wait to see if any more questions come in as well. 2H Media, Shopify, product stories, YouTube. Okay, I'll mute that tab so that it doesn't, so that you're not hearing YouTube sounds in the background. And I'll go to playlists. Shopify guides. Good ways to change Shopify. And yeah, so I'm going to drop a video link in the chat for you. Creating amazing product stories. This is a video I did a couple of years ago now. So I did this video 4 years ago. A lot of it's still totally up to date and totally accurate though. So in that video I walk through how to create a product story using templates in the customizer. I get into the really techie stuff like using dynamic fields so that you can like share information across products, and it can be really complicated, but the basics are in there too. So like you'll see right in there I walk through the process of creating a new template in the theme, or like in the customizer. I'm using the Dawn themes. Like it's one of the free ones that comes out of the box with Shopify. If you are a little bit technical, or you've got someone on your team who's a little bit technical, get them to check that video out, because it'll really help you get started in building those custom product templates in the customizer. It's one of the like coolest resources on Shopify, that the ability to build those templates, and it's super underutilized. So if you can start leveraging that and improving your product pages, that'll be really good for your business. I see Lemmy saying hi in the chat. Lemmy's one of our longest term Twitch subscribers. Been with us since even before I was with 2H Media. Good to see you, Lemmy. Manus, glad I could help you out with the product pages and some of your questions about getting traffic to the store. And then I see a first time chat from Ellie May or Eli May. Really insightful, thank you. Good to know what the average spend on ads should typically be each month too, for sure. Ad spend is one of those things where, you know, the higher the better, but if you're not meeting those minimum thresholds, just don't even bother, because you're going to waste a lot of time and not be able to compete with anyone else's bids anyways. I will give it another 30 seconds or so, see if any more questions pop up in the chat. And then, if not, I will start aiming towards wrapping this thing up. Nothing on the forum. I'm not seeing anything on the chat. So the last thing I'll do is I will pop over to Calendly and drop my link in the chat, so that if you want to meet with someone from 2H Media and get any more specific input from us, maybe there's questions that you don't feel comfortable asking in front of all the viewers on Twitch, you're more than welcome to book a meeting with us and chat with us directly. I have an e-commerce strategy call link. So if you're ready to actually kick off some digital advertising, or want to do like a long-term search engine optimization play for your website, then I would encourage you to meet with someone from our team. Book a free e-commerce strategy call with us. We'll take the time to get to know your business, answer your burning questions, and develop a plan that makes sense for you so that you can move forward with confidence and clarity. If that sounds impactful, book an e-commerce strategy call with us, and we hope to talk to you soon. Other than that, thank you all very much for joining me today. I hope you got some value out of this conversation. I hope I was able to answer your questions. If not, feel free to either book an e-commerce strategy call with us so that we can dive in directly, or connect with me on LinkedIn. I've been Aron Murch from 2H Media, running this Ask Me Anything in collaboration with Shopify. So thank you very much for joining me. Have a wonderful time, a wonderful day, happy holidays, and I look forward to chatting with you again next time we run one of these AMAs. So thank you very much, and have a fantastic day.